This is Tiffany Rosier, the host of the Afros and Knives podcast. We use the Anchor podcasting app to create and distribute the show. Creating a podcast on Anchor is effortless. It allows you to record a high-quality podcast and distribute it everywhere, including Google Podcast and Apple Podcast. They distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. No fancy equipment or podcasting experience is necessary, and it's 100% free. As long as you have a story to tell, Anchor is the platform to use. Share your story through audio using the Anchor app for Android, iPhone, or your desktop. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Welcome back to the Afros and Knives podcast, the interview series featuring Black women working and leading in food and beverage, food media, food science, food justice, and hospitality. I am your host, Tiffany Rosier, and this week's conversation is with Brooklyn native and the founder and chief curator of caribBEING, Shelley V Worrell. caribBEING is a thriving cultural organization that stands at the crossroads of art, film, and culture. If you just started to make your gift list, or if you're in the thick of your holiday shopping, be sure to add cookbooks to the mix. Cookbooks are the gift that keeps on giving all year long. 10 Speed Press has released some amazing titles this year. One of the very few saving graces of 2020. Vegetable Kingdom by Bryant Terry, which comes complete with a tool and pantry guide and a dope-ass soundtrack, which is available on Spotify. Then we have In Bibi's Kitchen by Hawa Hassan. This cookbook goes beyond just incredible recipes. It captures all the love and warmth of a grandmother's love, and it honors the rich culinary contributions of the women living in the 8 African countries that touch the Indian Ocean. And finally, there's Jubilee by Toni Tipton Martin, this book is a celebration of the unsung masters of American cooking and a collection of recipes from nearly 2 centuries of African American cooking. This season of the Afros and Knives podcast is sponsored by 10 Speed Press and is made possible through the generous contributions of the Patreon community. Visit patreon.com/Afros and Knives to become a patron of the show. I am also currently in the middle of the Afros and Knives Season 4 Pledge Drive. Thanks to Talenti, Gelato, and Sorbetto and their partnership with Black Food Folks for their generosity in awarding the Afros and Knives podcast a $5,000 grant, which brings me to 50% of the goal. So to make a pledge, you can visit the Afros and Knives website, which is afrosandknives.com, or you can make a donation directly through Venmo or PayPal, or you can go directly to the fundraising site, which is gogetfunding.com and then /Afros and Knives. So thank you so much for everyone's generosity and support. I am excited about season 4, and I would love to continue the work that we have all started together. I believe Black women, specifically in these industries, need a space to tell their stories, to share their wisdom, and it has been my honor and pleasure to be the guardian and keeper of this audio space, and I would love to continue to do it. And I'm excited to see the rest of the season get funded, and there's just so much in store for next season. So if you enjoy listening to this podcast as much as I enjoy making it, you can download, subscribe, and leave a comment. Reviews on Apple Podcast make a huge difference. So please be sure to just leave a short review, only a couple of sentences. Let me know how you feel about the show, how you feel about the topics, how you feel about the guest, and if it has done anything to add value to your life. I love to hear feedback. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. As weekly as I can get it. It's a weekly newsletter called The Journal. It features an Afro of the week, which is just an Afro in any form, whether it's illustration or sketch or photography. So it's just a celebration of that particular hairstyle that is a symbol of like power and royalty and love. I also show any promotions from my fellow folks in the community. So if there's something going on, an event coming up, you'll find it in the newsletter, as well as just keeping you up to date on a new guest or a new series. So be sure to sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss any information. There is, like I said, tons of stuff coming up in the next season, in the next year. 2020 has been a mix of madness and blessing, and so I'm going to take the blessing part and just run with it. So definitely, stay tuned. So let's get into this interview with Shelley, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
My name is Shelley V Worrell, and I'm the founder of caribBEING and Little Caribbean NYC. And we are what I call a cultural venture for creativity. And so we partner with artists, makers, chefs. So culinary artists are included in that category, as well as brands, to really seek out and highlight the best of Caribbean culture. One of the things that I think differentiates our work is that we are a pan-Caribbean platform. So we are extremely inclusive. In fact, our team is comprised of people who are from the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, the French Creole-speaking Caribbean, and the English-speaking Caribbean. So the only gap that we have is really the Dutch-speaking Caribbean. And those of you who are familiar with New York City know that there's not a huge population here of people from the Dutch Antilles or the Dutch Caribbean. And so we started this work 10 years ago. And we started off as a film festival, very experimental. And I think we started with film because I was working in media and television and film specifically. So my last job was at Google, where I led strategic partnerships, and I was doing content acquisition for YouTube. So naturally, that was my strength, and that's where we started. And our first event, I would say, wasn't really that successful. It was the Flatbush Film Festival here in Flatbush, where I live, also known as Little Caribbean. And we put up a series of classic and contemporary films. I'm sure there was food somewhere in that. And it was a hot mess. I think our most successful program was a senior program, which was a lot of fun. We ended up dancing with everyone, and they were like trying to give us money. And we were like, no, auntie, no money, at least not yet. And, I was sort of miserable and decided, okay, this is really not for me. So I went back to working in the media. And then the earthquake in Haiti happened, and our now co-founder and creative director, Jean-Luc Stanislas, he made a film on that effort. And I felt it was really important to screen that film here in the community. And that was an extremely successful event that was held at Brooklyn College, the Whitman Hall. There were over 300 people there. There was also lots of food and support from local restaurants, art, music. There was also a talk, and so immediately we became multidisciplinary, and we just kept building out from there.
I know I was reading your bio. I was like, okay, so she's done pretty much everything, and I was just like, I guess for me, I'm always interested in someone's why, because we end up, sometimes we choose work, other times work chooses us, and we get started on a path and find like either we are unhappy or unchallenged or unfulfilled, or maybe we are all of those things, but we find like maybe there's a better use of our talent, or we're curious about something. So for me, like, of course, looking at your history, I mean, we've got like the Brooklyn Historical Society, the Brooklyn Museum, the Municipal Art Society, the Queens Museum. I was like, Good Morning America, Black Enterprise, and Google and the History Channel. I was like, okay. So to make the pivot and to kind of look at your life and decide like, I'm going to do something else and take an action, but then like applying a why to it. So was there a why behind all the work you had done previous that just translated into the work you're doing now and what you're building now? Or did your why shift as you like found yourself in a new space?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And it's actually very relevant right now. So the why was because since then, I saw a lack of representation, right? And that's what everyone's talking about right now in the height of Black Lives Matter. But this is something that I saw while I was an undergraduate student studying culture with a specific concentration in Caribbean studies, and believe it or not, archaeology. And I came up with the concept of caribBEING back then. And then I went on to grad school. So the reason why I mentioned grad school is because I always saw that there was a huge, not only sort of opportunity for Caribbean arts, culture, even food, right? I know that a lot of your audience, are more in the culinary field. But my first year in grad school at NYU, I was studying hospitality and tourism management, again, because I had a problem with the way Caribbean culture and just the overall product was positioned in the world. It's really, sun, sand, sea, and, we can also add sex, right? So I saw that gap and that need for proper and authentic representation since then. Again, I didn't realize that I had signed up for hotel school effectively, which was reclaiming a lot of land from communities. And so naturally, that was not a good fit for me philosophically. So I actually then went on to the second sort of like opportunity or need that I saw, which was in media. So I ended up going to the New School to study media studies. And so the why has also always been about like authenticity and representation. We started off with that why. And then, how can I leverage my strengths? I've been traveling back and forth between New York, which is home to the largest, most diverse Caribbean community outside of the Caribbean itself, and the Caribbean since I was 6 months old. So I effectively grew up between New York and the West Indies. And, just the other day, I was counting the number of islands that I visited, and I've been to over 35. So, I've traveled very, very extensively as well in the region. I participated in a number of carnivals. Of course, I've eaten lots of Caribbean food, not only in New York, but on the islands themselves. So, that has always been my why. And how can I contribute from sort of like a place of expertise, right? And so when I mentioned, Flatbush Film, like that was something that I was doing professionally in the media, right? I was procuring and distributing TV and film content around the world, right? So why not do that for our community?
It's interesting that because of where we are, the space we're all kind of occupying right now with re-educating and reprogramming and deprogramming and kind of just unpacking and undoing and like shedding a lot of terrible education and terrible references and context, and like just shedding a lot of the misinformation and in an effort to rebuild in a way that is respectful and healthy and vibrant, that something that can actually like grow. And so specifically with like Black people, because we're not a monolith and we have so many different like backgrounds and ethnically, where we're from, and depending on where the slave ship stopped, on what continent and landmass and island, and those experiences kind of have given us this level of diversity just among Black people, and specifically to those who
Mm-hmm.
are whose history comes from the islands and comes from the Caribbean. What is something, if someone's re-educating themselves at this point, because I know a lot of the history in the United States that's taught about just about any place is kind of trash. So if someone's re-educating themselves, what's the first thing for you as you kind of as you got into this work, and spent the last decade just putting new content out and new material out for audiences? What is something that you would want somebody to start? Like, where would you want someone to start, like dismantling a lot of the misconceptions about the people who occupy those islands and come from those islands?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I would start with probably travel, right? I mean, the best way to sort of like go and learn about culture and history is by actually, you know, physically going there, right? And by going there, you immerse yourself into not only the culture, the food, the history, right? And you get to actually meet people in real life and hear their stories. You get to go to the markets. You get to, go to the downtown, the capitals, whether it's Kingston, Port-au-Prince, Port of Spain, Havana, right? You actually get to actually feel, the music, the vibes, and everything. So I would say travel, though I understand that that could be quite challenging given where we are right now with the pandemic. So I think other good entry points are music, and of course food. Food is something that has its ability, just like music, to just sort of like I don't know, like gather people, even if you don't understand um, that song could be in a different language, right? And you can still, I mean, there's so many songs that I know and love, and I don't speak that language at all, right? So it's just a rhythm. It's just, I feel I really connect to it. So via the sound, the syncopation, that kind of thing. So that's one. Food, of course, is also something that I think is a really great entry point. And then, of course, literature. So if you're interested in the Caribbean, there are a number of fantastic scholars and books, past and present, that I think that people can start to really understand what took place in the Caribbean when sugar was king. Um, and yeah, so that's where I would start.
My favorite entry point into just about anything is to find a good book, or find out who the authors or the writers are within like a culture or an industry or whatever, what have you. Um, and I know when we first kind of started on this, like, Black Lives Matter, Black people are cool situation that we're in right now, there was a lot of lists and, of Black people you should follow and read, and Black, and all those other things. And often when I look at lists, even before now, with Black authors, a lot of the names that are missing are of Black people from other places, from other countries. So a lot of times you're really concentrated on authors or writers who are from New York or California. Handful every now and again you have a southern author or writer. And for me, it's always frustrating because, again, we kind of almost lean or play into the idea that all Black people are the same and have the same story and the same voice. And, for me, like, reading new authors challenges not only your like comprehension skills and gives you new information, but having to read a book in possibly a language that you don't quite understand, and that could be either a completely foreign language linguistically, or because you don't understand the slang, or you don't understand the informal language of something, or a cultural reference. And So for me, I've always been on a hunt for books by, Caribbean authors and writers and, trying to find their work. So for you, because you're in so many spaces and you have your hands in so many things, what writers do you look to, and which authors do you come back to that you recommend to people?
Yeah. So that's funny because I'm sitting like in front of my books right now. So sort of like my favorite Caribbean authors, I'll try to name 10. So there's V.S. Naipaul, who I'm actually named after, particularly his early works. So one of my favorite books by him is, oh my gosh, and I'm forgetting the name of it. How can I forget?
No worries.
Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Oh gosh, I can't remember right now, but I'll come back to it.
We'll throw a list up at the end or on the episode page.
Right. I'm like, how did I forget the name of my favorite book? Miguel Street. Sorry, it's called Miguel Street. It just came back to me. Miguel Street it's almost like it's a book, but it is also a collection of short stories. And I feel like I know everyone in that book. Like it's just in real life. And I remember the first time I read that book and being on the subway, just in tears, in stitches, like totally cracking up. Just so well written. So his early works are extremely powerful, I think. There's also C.L.R. James, Eric Williams. Dandacat is one of my favorite writers of all times, Edwidge Dandacat. She's Haitian, now living in Miami. And actually, when she moved from Haiti, she moved directly to Flatbush, not too far from where I live. So I love Dandacat, and not because of that, but she's just a beautiful writer. Frantz Fanon, Derek Walcott. More contemporary writers, I would say Elizabeth Acevedo, as well as Nicole Dennis Ben, Marlon James. Those are all fantastic writers that I'm really, and a lot of them sort of like the writing is between the Caribbean and some diasporic city. So I really like that because of course, me being what we call a caripolitan, that those works really resonate with me as well. So those are some of the authors that I would say are amongst my favorite and really, really good starting points to Caribbean literature.
Perfect. And we will definitely get that list posted up on the website, because I definitely need to get onto my Kindle and like download as much as possible.
The other thing I would add to that in terms of cooking is the Naparima Girls Cookbook. It's just like a quintessential Caribbean cookbook. The recipes are out of this world, really authentic. I usually around the holidays we sell it on our site, but and it has like a real diverse set of Caribbean recipes. So in addition to Afro-Caribbean food, or even some like slave food, there's also Indo-Caribbean, there's some Chinese cooking in there, some Lebanese cooking. So the Naparima Girls, I would also say, is like a quintessential, like from a culinary standpoint, book to have.
Oh, perfect. I mean, since we're on the subject of food, I mean, for you, what's kind of your go-to dish, and then what's something you're constantly, I also people cooking is a practice. So is there a dish that you go to challenge yourself, and then what's your comfort food?
Yeah, I eat a lot of fish, and I would say that's like my specialty, and a lot of people feel really challenged by making like fresh fish, so I make a lot of like whole stuffed fish. It's my own recipe. I just was on Food 52 making a version of it. And so I would say that's like my go-to and something I've been cooking a lot this summer. Believe it or not, my challenge dish is pilau, which is like a really basic, like almost like an arroz con pollo or paella. dish, but for some reason, mine is like really, really good, but it's not perfect. It's not like my auntie perfect yet or my mom yet.
Mm.
But I think and I had a whole like 30-minute conversation with my aunt in Trinidad about it, like about a week ago, because I was trying to understand like why my texture was a little bit off. And I think she was able to like help me figure it out. And one is because I'm putting pumpkin in it, and that sweats it more than I would like. But I like my rice with pumpkin. I like my pilau with pumpkin, just like I like my kaolu with pumpkin, and my oil down or breadfruit. So she thinks it's because I'm actually adding the pumpkin and adding it too early. So that's something that I make, I would say really, really well, but it's still not like where I want it to be yet. It's not like something I would like.
I love those types
Yeah,
of dishes.
it's not like something I'm going to go on TV and cook. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think people will come for me. They'll be like, you know what, Shelley, I think you need to go practice that a little bit more.
She's like, what are you doing? What's happening with this pumpkin? What's happening?
Right. And then I'll have to like defend myself and be like, this is the remix, the Payload remix.
Like, don't remix it. Just
exactly. Right. And I just don't want to have that conversation. So.
Oh man. What's your comfort food? Like, what's the thing, like if you're missing family or friends or home, or just want to kind of rebalance your soul a little bit? What's the thing you tend to cook or eat?
Yeah, I'm a huge lover of roti, and there's a particular place in my neighborhood, I won't name names, but there's an Asian woman, and she's not Asian, Caribbean. She's like Asian, who married into a Trinidadian family. And she's always debating me and my friends and my mom, who's born in Trinidad and who makes roti, who makes basapshat, like that some people wrap paratha. I mean, and, you know, by default, it's just meant to be eaten not only with your hands, but separate. And so, like, I roll my eyes. I'm always talking about how roti is being gentrified because she is trying to make it a burrito, you know, or some type of wrap, right? And it's not, you know, and there's parts of me that sometimes I don't want to go back there, but their food is actually good. But like, that just bothers me that you're going to like tell me how this is eaten.
For me, there's just certain things that you don't get creative with them. Like, the reason why they are what they are is because it is at its like peak when you eat it that way. And so to like mess around, I just don't understand why everything has to be portable or like a sandwich or a wrap or a burrito at this point. Like, have we forgotten to use utensils in our hands? And like, what's really going on? Because people have tried to slap things into a pita pocket. I mean, all manner of meals have been shoved into a sandwich or between two slices of bread. Y'all, come on.
Right.
Leave the classics alone. They are classics for a reason.
Leave the culture alone. Like, don't try to remix it. Like, and then don't debate. Debate. That's the part that kills me, is that first, like, I'm telling you, because I eat all of my roti unwrapped, right? Like, and there's some people who eat it wrapped, like a regular dal puri or roti can be eaten wrapped, right? And I just personally don't like any of my roti wrapped because, you know, I'm half Indo-Caribbean and it's just the way I grew up eating it. And so, and I also just don't like my food like mixed together. I like my food separate. And, you know, you just dip in like the pumpkin, then you dip in a little chana or potatoes, or if you're having goat or chicken or shrimp, whatever. Like, I just like to sort of like grab the flavors individually, and then, you know, last like maybe some tamarind and pepper sauce. So,
okay, hold on. Go back to the tamarind and pepper. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, so the one great thing about, you know, growing up Trinidadian in particular is that we make a lot of sauces, like chutneys and different types of sauces. A lot of them are sour and a lot are spicy. So tamarind sauce has like these sweet and sour notes, and it's eaten with, you can eat it with roti, you can eat it with aloo pie, you can have it with doubles, and I like also to have mine with roti as well. And I also put it on fish, believe it or not. Like, I make this tamarind grilled fish And then, again, a lot of people from the Caribbean, particularly, I would say all of the Caribbean, we love spicy food. So there's always some kind of pepper sauce. In this case, with roti, it's usually like some kind of like, Scotch bonnet, even a mustardy pepper or mango pepper or something like that. So, and I like my food extra, extra, extra hot. So I put pepper on everything. I collect pepper sauce.
Ooh.
I have like at least 12 pepper sauces, a mixture of like homemade sauces and store-bought sauces.
I wish I could. And, when people, I don't like spicy foods. It's not that I don't. I usually once or twice a year, I will go to an Indian restaurant and ruin my entire life and digestive system so I can eat some food, because I physically, like the physical reaction I have to spicy food is not pretty. Like I usually will have a heat rash for 2 or 3 days.
Oh, okay.
I just can't even, my body can't metabolize it like for me, but I will sit in a restaurant crying, sniffling, looking crazy, eyes dilated. And I had one restaurant I went in with a friend, and the server kept coming up to me completely concerned that I was going to implode at the table. Look, man, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I don't have to go to work tomorrow. I take the day off for a reason because I won't need the full day to recover. And it's okay. I have a coating on my stomach, and this is what we're going to do. So like I did when I lived in Nashville, we used to do the Nashville Hot Chicken Festival. That almost killed me once. I didn't care because I always I can go past the heat and get into the flavor is my thing. And I'm like, it just tastes good. And so, yeah, I just take the hit. It's okay. But I have to be really strategic about the level of heat and like how I approach it. The strangest thing was when I started to eat a lot of Korean food, kimchi didn't give me as many challenges. So I don't know why that gochujang pepper is a bit different, but where the spice hits my palate, I don't suffer as much. But girl, I really wish, because all of my siblings can eat spicy food.
Maybe you need to try like pickles or like more of the vinegar base, which I feel like is more like kimchi.
Yeah, it's like fermentation's got a little bit of. Okay, we can go into a deep dive on this spice, but I'm going to back up and go back to your present work and how, for me, when I was working as a designer before I became a chef, a big part of how I would work with a client is to make sure that there was always a thread that ran through the design work that was reflective of who they were as a person or the brand or the spirit of the brand. And that way it just felt more authentic, and it felt more like it felt like them. So when you saw their stuff in public and maybe saw a logo in public and then met someone from the company or the brand, you could recognize kind of the spirit in it. It was always reflective and always was creating a mirror. So when I look at people's work, the first thing I'm always curious about is where are they? What part of their DNA is imprinted on their work? So when someone's looking at the work you do right now, what can they learn about you as a person from engaging with what you do?
That's a good question. What can they learn about me? I think it goes back to sort of like our ethos of just being inclusive, right? And that our work is not singular, just like, you talked about being Black is not a monolith. Like, we really try to embody the entire Caribbean, right? And I know that could be hard. A lot of people is like, how do you do that? Like, how can you, like, in one event or one particular dish embody the entire Caribbean? And the thing is that we don't, right? But like, throughout the course of our work, right, we have. So obviously, like every film screening, every art exhibition, every culinary event, or every product that we have may not have every single piece, or it may only represent one particular island, culture, genre, whatever, or even artist. But like, if you look at the work in aggregate, then you'll see that common thread.
That's, for me, it's when you finally do kind of, especially when you're engaging in like something new. And most people are, at this point, I think once we're done with quarantine and and all these other things, and we get back out into the world collectively, it's going to be interesting to see how much of the supporting Black businesses, Black brands, Black events, Black work will remain. Because I think right now, of course, in isolation, and we're kind of in a vacuum at the moment, it's a lot simpler because you really only have to do it through the internet at this point. Like there's really no kind of like put up or shut up. There's no real, accountability there for like, oh, we've planned an event and 500 people are expected. And, there's there's physical evidence to the support. So that's not really quite pressing yet for most people. And so as they, I think as we talk about supporting Black people in their work, in their presence in the world, it's important to remember that just like every other brand engagement and product engagement that people have in their lives, that when you engage with Black business and Black communities and Black companies and all of those things, you're engaged with Black people. And it's a way to get to know us and understand us. And so for me, I'm like, if you're out here and you are talking about how much Black lives matter to you or Black businesses matter to you, this is the work. It's like, you show up to the things that are, happening in the world to start to get to know who we are and what we do and how we move in the world.
I'm already seeing that. I feel like that whole effort, or, I don't know if I want to say effort, or almost like that's starting to fade into the background, right? I mean, and it's only been, a few months so I feel like I'm not seeing a lot of that centered as much as we were for the few weeks during the height of all of the protests, right? So we'll see.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to watch if people still prioritize it. Now for, of course, new work always brings us joys and challenges. So what was it when you made your pivot and kind of got out of doing media the way you were into this particular space? What were the things that surprised you about the work that you just didn't expect? And what were the things that were your biggest challenges?
Surprise, I would say, we started off as a nonprofit, right? And I thought it would be much easier to have a nonprofit than it is, I should say, rather. Yeah, that was really challenging for me. Because again, it was experimental. I was working, back when I started caribBEING 10 years ago, people weren't doing side hustles like they are now. That wasn't really a thing, as it has become in the last, let's say 5 years, 3 to 5 years, where it's oh, I work full time, but I have this t-shirt brand over here, or I have this over, you know what I mean? Some other, I'm a private chef by night or on weekends and things like that so for me, being that I had, a profession, I was a rising executive in media and tech, I, set it up as a nonprofit. And, I didn't know if anyone would be interested. So that was also surprising that people, want and continue to want more from us. People as of a couple of years ago, they were asking us to, travel with us, right? So those things were surprising.
That is pretty interesting. People are like, can you take us can you take us places with you? You're like, I don't know you like that.
Right. And that's how I feel, because I'm like, do I want to be a tour guide or a travel guide in that way, for a whole week or even a few days? I'm not sure. Travel is a very specific thing. The other thing is a lot of academics and scholars have been reaching out about their research as well. So yeah, I mean, those were surprises. There have been a few classes taught on our work, at least 2, one at Cornell and one at Brooklyn College. So those were also pleasant surprises that happened along the way as well.
What's been the kind of the number one, well, maybe not number one question, what are the questions that kind of still circulate around your work? What are they, because it's been taught? It's interesting because it's usually in response to a desire for some type of knowledge or to kind of re-educate yourself. So are there common questions that keep coming back that you guys keep responding to either in your work or just directly in conversation?
I can't think of anything offhand. I mean, I think, the common question sometimes is how we do things, how did you create the caribBEING house? Who did it? It's more it's always secret sauce stuff. no one's sharing their secret recipe, you know.
Right. People are great. You're just like, no, you're
Like,
not
are
seeing
you
them
gonna go to
behind the red
Tabasco and
curtain.
be like, "Hey, Tabasco, like, what's the recipe?" Like, you
I
think they're
just,
Italian?
that's like, I'm just curious. They're like, no, you're not. Just go away.
Right. You know, and like, how did you globally distribute your sauce? Like, those are, I mean, you know, people just ask common Black people questions or people of color questions.
I'm like, yeah, how about no? How about we talk about something else? That is hilarious.
But it's
Audacious
true.
and hilarious.
It's true. It's actually the most common question. And like now to the point where everyone's prepared for it. So like we all just kind of like, you know, like everyone on the team is prepared for it because everyone on the team has gotten the question in one or many, you know, like different ways, whether it's about the Caribbean house, about Little Caribbean, about where our products are made and, you know, how this and how that, like that is the most common question.
Oh,
And they
that
will,
is.
if they don't get the answer from me, they'll go to the next person, and then that
Uh,
will come back and tell me.
I'm like, could you not? I'm like, we all work together. What made you think?
Right, I'm the founder, guys. I have a really good relationship with the team.
Like, come on, get it together. You know, not to give away any secret sauce, but are there projects on the horizon, things that you've just kind of had your eyes on, maybe not have your hands in just yet, or questions you want to answer yourself within your work?
Yeah, right now we're relaunching our websites, so that should be happening sometime in August, both caribBEING.com and littlecaribbean.nyc. So that's been really fun. I've been working on that for like a while, a good several weeks. We're working with an agency and some really great creatives on that. So that's one thing. We're also about to launch a campaign with Lyft to support small businesses here in Flatbush, what we call Little Caribbean NYC. So that's very exciting. As I mentioned, I've been working on sort of like just a casual series on Food 52. So the first episode recently went up. I also wrote the corresponding recipe with support of my aunties. I have 3 aunts that are professional chefs. So I got some technical support from them. So those are a few of the things that we're working on right now that are very exciting.
I'm a big fan of Food 52. I love so much about their brand. Works for me, and it's been a favorite since they started. But
yeah, I've been on it before. Like I was been like guest on someone else's show. She had a Japanese cooking show, and we had like a Caribbean barbecue. Like I don't know, like 2 or 3 years ago, and it did extremely well. And I was just like, hey, you know, I love cooking. You know, maybe I need to start sharing some of these recipes and yeah, so that's something I've been working on, and they're fun too.
good. Good. It's been a minute, and I'd like to do a little bit of research on the folks that I invite onto the show. But there was this really beautiful article in the New York Times about how you spend your Sundays. And I think this is from 2017. And it kind of focused a bit on like the work you do in your garden. Mm-hmm. And I was, you know, being what I refer to as a plant mother, you know, and I love farming and of course working as a chef, you know, growing your own food and spending time in like outside with your hands in the dirt has always been like something that calls to me. Yeah. So do you still keep your garden? Is it something that's been like, cause I was like, well, it's been 3 years. So who knows what that looks like now.
No, I garden. I definitely still garden. I have this year I'm growing tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, eggplant, a few different peppers. So pimento peppers, which are like a Caribbean seasoning pepper. They're not spicy, but really tasty. I have sweet peppers, cayenne peppers, habanero peppers, and about at least 25 different herbs. So ranging from cilantro to rue, chamomile, different thymes, oreganos, chives, just a lot of different mints. So pineapple mint, peppermint, spearmint. Those are for like drinks. So yeah, I still am a gardener. It's very grounding for me. I have 2 gardens actually. And then also like cooking, like with stuff that you grow, even if it's just like a snip of thyme or rosemary or something, there's nothing more rewarding than like going to your backyard or your, you know, container raised bed, or even if it's a windowsill and like snipping off a few herbs. Like that's, I think, one of the most rewarding things.
This is true. It makes you happy. I know I'd gotten some flowers a few days ago and like sitting there and kind of trimming them and getting them into a vase. And like
Mm-hmm.
it's very meditative to be able to do that.
And same with cooking, right? So it's always
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm cooking this, like, what fresh herb? Like last night, I made a grilled black sea bass, and I made it with tarragon, garlic, and just some lime and some black pepper. So yeah, I was like, okay, well, what herb am I going to use? And it was tarragon, right? And I mean, I had it. Like I didn't have to use dry tarragon. Like it was fresh from my backyard.
So nice. It's always like, yes, I know where it came from and whose hands have been on it. It's always so nice to think about that because gardening and like, again, like spending that time in those activities gives you time to like just think and like be alone with your own thoughts. And currently with us, with a lot of us having to be indoors or having to spend a lot more time pausing and like self-reflecting, or hopefully people are. Do you find yourself doing any kind of interpersonal work that is new, or anything that you have had found some time to like spend working on for yourself that's not necessarily related to the business or to what you're doing for other people? So is there any like kind of self-care stuff that you've had some time to spend working on during the last few months?
Yeah, I mean, I've been spending more time on my hair.
Look, okay.
I have, and I usually am not like a person because I just like comb it out and it's an afro. So I've been spending a little bit more time with my hair, and also been exercising a lot more than I normally would. So, making sure I'm going on a daily walk. I've been hula hooping, which has been a lot of fun.
Love this. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people laugh at me, but I actually love it, and
I love it.
I feel like I'm dancing, and I love dancing, and I used to be a dancer. So I started dancing when I was 3. So yeah, like walking and hula hoop.
I know I've loved the emergence of like Black women on skates in the
Yes,
last oh my God, it's bringing me so much joy and so much life.
it is true. I don't need a Black woman who hula hoops. I need a
Yes,
girl.
please. I think it's like you and Carla Hall, because I know Carla Hall loves the hula hoop and has put herself on plenty of Insta stories with the hula hoop. I was like, no, I think as many Black women that can like show those moments to the rest of the world of them enjoying something like that, like deeply enjoying it, I think would boost everybody at this point. Because like, honestly, the one thing I have, I definitely can agree with is that finding space for joy is definitely an act of resistance at this point
Mm-hmm.
because
And napping, it's just like napping, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm a sleeper. I've always been a proponent of sleep, and I have to sleep 8 hours. And so if there's like 4 to 6 weeks where I may even sleep like 10 or 12 to like completely recharge my batteries. But like sleep is so important and underrated.
it's true. And I've never been really great at it. And I finally went and had a sleep study done. And the doctor was like, you're what we call a short sleeper. You need about 5 hours. And if you get more than that, you probably aren't any good. I'm like, that's so true. But it
Oh,
has to be like 5 really good hours. It can't be like 3 raggedy hours and 2 great hours.
yeah, but everyone is different when it comes
Yeah.
to that, right? Like for me, it's 8. And I know that. And if not, I'm like completely miserable. Just like in the morning, like I drink lemon water, like ritualistically, and then I have 2 oat milk lattes right after
Mm.
that with a splash of Angostura bitters. I feel like they need to sponsor me because I'm always like, yeah, put bitters in your coffee.
Yes, please.
But yeah, like before I'm like on my at least cup and a half, I really don't want to talk to anyone. I'm like, can you leave me alone?
It's true. It's true. Like 10 a.m. is usually when I will invite conversation. It's usually after like some mushroom coffee with a little bit of oat milk, and then we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
For oat, like, do you have a favorite oat milk? Because it's kind of new to people.
Oatly,
Ooh, okay. And are you doing the full fat?
barista.
Oh, okay. I gotta try the barista. I like the full fat, but I definitely am like, I need something with a little bit more heft. So I might have to lean into the barista.
Barista is like it's good because you could like froth it
Yeah.
and like it's really creamy and milky. Like I like my milk. Like
Oh, it's so
I've
good.
seen people like evaporated milk and like condensed milk. Like and
Yeah.
It gives me that full cream flavor that I need.
Oh, that's brilliant. Do you have a morning routine that you follow? Because I know like there was, last year everybody was all about it. And then all of a sudden it was like, you don't need to have a morning routine. Don't let these people pressure you. It's just like, but having some semblance of routine in your day does help.
I told you, I drink lemon water. And then I drink my 2 oat milk lattes.
And then I'm ready to go.
That's my morning routine.
And I also feel like the morning routine doesn't have to be anything super hefty. Like I know I saw some people with like 12 steps in their morning routine. I'm like, that's too much.
Lemon water, and sometimes like in about 4 to 5 days a week, in between my latte and lemon water is celery juice or some type of fresh juice.
Okay,
with the large celery base.
Yeah. I just finished a 3-day juice cleanse, and it started with the celery juice in the morning. So I was like, that's.
And I actually like celery juice. It tastes, but I love celery, so it tastes good.
I thought it tasted delicious, and as long as it's not mixed with anything, I'm fine. The minute they start mixing and adding things, I'm like, this is terrible. Don't do that to the celery.
I don't like it, but I like it.
I do. I enjoy it. I don't
even strain mine. It's just like I juice it and I drink it.
To shifting a bit back to your work-life combo at this point, has there been any like major like setbacks and failures that you've learned from and that you can that you essentially disseminate to now the lessons to other people? Because I know I was reading about how like you have a really solid team and you have a lot of interns. So what are those lessons that you gained from setbacks and failures that you essentially pass on to your team and to the kids that work around you?
I think I probably quit my job a little too early, to be honest. Yeah, so I would say that would have been my biggest lesson, but I still have no regrets though.
Right.
Like, because at the time I mean, there were other reasons. It wasn't only caribBEING. I mean, my father was very sick at the time. I also didn't like the team that I was on. So the way I describe it is like, if you have the most expensive pair of shoes in the world, let's say they're like Hermes, right? Which is like one of the most ultra luxury brands in the world. And you have like these shoes and they're amazing, but they hurt your feet. Like your feet are killing you. Are you going to still wear them? So that's really existential in terms of a question. But yeah, I mean, so I kind of describe, because people are like, oh, you quit your job at Google and blah, blah, blah. And, but I was on a really bad team, and now in hindsight, like the things that I'm seeing and the things I'm learning, like a lot of it was like racism and like gaslighting, and trauma, even though I was the highest functioning person on that team. So yeah, I mean, and I look at some people who were my peers then and they stayed in the media and they're like now in C-suite. And so, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But then, when I look at my work, like, I just had a call before this and, there have been like, I'm not bragging, but there have been over like 200 articles written about the work that we've generated, caribBEING, Little Caribbean, Carapolitan, myself. I mean, and if I were in the media, like that doesn't happen. Right. And maybe I may have a few write-ups because, I got a promotion, or maybe I got like some great job, or I was at a conference. But like all of this is like us self-generating this work, filling this gap and this need, right? Listening to our community and sort of just like following that North Star. So yeah, I have no regrets.
I love it. I mean, the one thing I, from probably right around March when a lot of, people started to be out of work and having to pivot and rethink work and like where it is on the priority list and what their work could look like. The one thing that has kind of come up time and time again in conversation is this idea of making a pivot and being flexible and kind of not, I guess, not absorbing things as a failure or letting failure be something that you are in opposed to something that has happened. And then, the fact that being able to have a setback or fail to have a failure happen is really kind of caught up in this idea of white privilege. It's like Black people do not get the privilege of like failure or changing our mind or stepping back, or like, we have to either charge ahead, mistakes are not really permitted. It's just like being able to now hold space for ourselves to look at life and reflect and then make a change or make a shift if we have to. And that just is something that I think, I know we have turned a corner when it feels comfortable to talk about, having to make a change, whether it be a forced change or, an opportunity that comes up and that you can go, okay, I can take on that opportunity. And, people aren't going, well, what about your income? What about your job? Because it's also, without fail, especially as a young Black person, the first question to a lot of people is, where are you going to go to college? Are you going to have a job? For us, it's always about survival or being able to take care of yourself, and not so much pursuing work that means something to you or staying in your purpose. And, people don't understand, like, the reach of systemic racism is that long. And, we don't get that opportunity to, I think I was talking to someone and they were like, we don't get to go to like think tanks and just wake up in the morning and people would just pay us to kind of create solutions to problems. That's not something that we're afforded. We don't get time to just think, or to, like, to your point about napping, we don't get time to rest. And like the idea of rest within the Black community is not something that the messaging around that has never been great. It's always been, well, because of course it starts with kind of the lazy slave narrative, and then it's kind of just keeps going from there. So we're never at rest at any point. We're always having to work, and, that whole hustle life and just all of those things. I'm hoping we can all kind of step back and really look at them and decide that they don't hold the value that they did hold. I mean, there's a time for activity and there's a time for rest. And, it's having the privilege of being able to rest, I think, is really where I'm kind of hanging out, like being able to rest, being able to stop and think. And it's just, that's just kind of always been what has been transpired in the last few months, is being able to evaluate, Black life in the United States and realizing that, because not even rest and failure and all those other things are part of being able to be Black in the United States at the very least. It's definitely a part of like the white privilege conversation to be able to go, oh man, that didn't work out. Let me try something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point, because also, I think about, like, if I stopped doing caribBEING right now and all of my work and went to do something else, whatever it is, right? I think would be okay. Like, I would feel accomplished, right? Or I did a lot. Of course, there's a lot more we want to do and that we could do and things like that. So, but yeah, I mean, to your point of rest, the other thing, when I talked about, working at a place like Google, I always felt like I was out of breath. Like, I couldn't breathe. Like, I was like, I don't know why I said I couldn't breathe, but that's how I felt. I felt like I was literally, like, I couldn't breathe. Like, there was a foot, like maybe there was a knee on my neck, or I was underwater, like I was drowning. And that's just like not a comfortable place to be. And it's just not the way that I wanted to live my life. So yeah, but I mean, that is sort of like the state of like what you're talking about, of like, not having that privilege. And I speak to people who are still there, and they kind of say the same thing, that it's still the same somewhat. The last time I spoke with someone there, she told me like there's like a whole crew, they're like the Underground Railroad to rescue people. I'm like, what? She told me that. She was like, well, I'm like Harriet Tubman. And I was like, what? I was like,
Okay.
I was like, first of all, where were you when I needed you to rescue me? And then secondly,
wow.
Like, that's how they call their unit.
Okay. Cool. Like me and my sister go, cool. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, wow. Okay, wow. Sometimes you just go, okay. I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore.
Exactly. Because it's still like, if you're like, is that the culture that you want to be in?
Right. Oh, wow. Well, before my brain implodes from that one, I'll give you the last few minutes, like give you just two final questions, and then I'd love to hear about like how we can support you and, what work you're doing right now and where we, of course, can connect and find you. So question number one is, what have been like your top three favorite moments of like the last like year and a half? Even though this year's been kind of weird, there's been some really like incredible highlights for people. And then the other question is, what does it mean to be unapologetically human to you?
So I would say top three, believe it or not, is having the flexibility. During the pandemic, we were called upon to do a number of things. Like one was to feed frontline healthcare workers. Like we were amongst the first to be asked to do that before, like everyone, all the restaurants jumped on and, everyone was like, oh, I'm feeding, like I'm converting my restaurant into like a kitchen or whatever to serve frontline workers. Like we were amongst the first. And so we were able to turn that around within like a week's worth of food within 3 hours for 2 hospitals, right? And similarly, we were asked to get involved with getting iPads donated to a local hospital who just couldn't deal with, Corona. I mean, one of the hospitals who had like a truck outside, we know what those trucks were for. And they asked actually I was speaking to this Underground Railroad woman, Harriet Tubman at Google, and she was like, Shelley, and she's also from Flatbush, she's of the Caribbean descent. And she was like, well, I want to help Brookdale Hospital. And how can I help? I happen to know the chair of the board. And so I asked him and he said iPads, he said tech. So we were able to raise funds for that. And then a few days later, the city of New York reached out to me and asked me to deliver 40,000 masks to frontline workers, local restaurants. And so we did that over a week. So that was actually the highlight of my last year, is really just like hyper serving my community. Similar to like now this whole Lyft initiative that we're working on to like gift, to actually like, and I wouldn't say gift, but we have $5,000 in vouchers to support neighborhood businesses. And that's really important to me because like, me being able to go outside and like get roti or jerk chicken or a patty is super important, or even go to a West Indian market. And so, being able to have people come here to support these businesses economically is supporting the community where I was born and raised and still reside. So I would say over the last year, that has been the most important work that I've done. Social impact, community impact.
Perfect. I love it.
And what was the second question?
Oh, the other one is, what does it mean to be unapologetically human?
I don't know how to answer that question.
No problem. Sometimes that's it. That is the answer.
I don't even know if I understand that question.
It's really just kind of looks at, or the question for me examines what it means to minus some of the added social constructs. Like, what is it to show up in the world as a human being? What does that?
Now, it's to serve others, to like serve your community, right? I guess that's it.
What's been great is that no one has the same answer. And I think part of the answer itself is wrapped up there, is that no one person has the same answer. Is that to show up as being like unapologetic, meaning like, you don't need to seek forgiveness for, taking up space in the world, and how you take up space and how you move in the world is not something you have to explain. It's just like, what does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, when you can just be? I think for me, that's how I would answer that right now. But also, that's how I would answer that.
It's perfect. I love it. That's good. So,
but it's funny because I have a cousin who calls me a humanitarian. She's like, "You're a humanitarian," and I'm like, "No, I'm not." Right?
The connotation definitely is problematic. Like, humanitarian efforts have done just as much as I think is some
good for sure. But also, I think of a humanitarian as someone like Mother Teresa or like Mahatma Gandhi. You know what I mean? Like, sort of like, beyond life itself. And I don't see myself in that light. So, but I think serving your community and being, and community means like a lot of different things for us and for me in particularly. Lately, it's been hyper local. because we were not allowed to go anywhere. I have not been to Manhattan since Corona. Actually, I've not left Brooklyn. To be honest with you, have I left Brooklyn? I don't think I've left Brooklyn. Wow. That's pretty bad.
That is so funny. You're just like, wow. I know. And when I see people like on like Insta stories or YouTube, like, hey, I haven't been like outside of my borough in 5 months. And I'm going,
that person. And it's funny because, like New Yorkers are like, there are a lot of New Yorkers. I remember when I was younger, I used to think about my aunt who never left. Like, I have a lot of family who don't leave their borough, like Brooklyn. And in their case, it's like Brooklyn. Like, they don't really go to the city or to Queens or anywhere. Am I like auntie?
Is there some secret sauce to like living my life this way? Oh man, I grew up outside of Philadelphia in South Jersey, and
I used to live in South Jersey. I lived in Mays Landing, and my mom used to live in Linwood. Where in South Jersey?
I grew up in like Pennsauken and Collingswood. And then my dad lives in Berlin still. And my grandmother...
There's a flea market there, right? Berlin.
Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, I mean, I've had like my friends were from, of course, like Maple Shade and where else?
What high school did you go to?
I went to Pennsauken Vocational. And then the beginning of my 11th grade year is when me and my older brother moved to Arizona. So yeah, and then it was like after high school graduation, I came back and then I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia for design and advertising. And I lived in Collingswood at that point. So yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, most people are like South Jersey. I'm like, yes, we have to make the distinction.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
South Jersey's like an extension of Philly, right? I mean,
yeah, like when you're, especially in the more urban parts, it's like, I want to say even geographically, technically, it's still a suburb of Philadelphia. And then you, of course, get outside of that and you start to move toward Atlantic City and then it becomes its own thing. But yeah.
We were kind of in that area, unfortunately. But I mean, not in Atlantic City, but like in that, more of that vicinity.
Yeah. It's just incredible because, like, I grew up going to like apple orchards and there was always a ton of green around. So when people ask where I'm from and I explain it, they're like, I've never seen that part of New Jersey before. What do you mean it's green? Yeah. I'm like, anything south of like Princeton is green. Yeah. We're called the Garden State for a reason.
What exit were you on the Garden State?
Let's see. We were 114, I want to say, because
that's high. That's not South Jersey.
Yeah,
that's like Middle Jersey. That's like Central Jersey.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because everything was like a 35-minute drive. I'm trying to remember. Oh my god, like what exit was that? Because we were always off of. Let's see, it's Route 130 and then like White Horse Pike.
The White Horse Pike and the Black Horse Pike.
Yes. I'm like, oh God, what exit is that at this point? There, we still had like, the roundabouts or the circles. Yeah. I think they had gotten rid of all of them except for one by the time I got to high school. But yeah, I wanted to, like, I was supposed to go to like Rowan University at some point. But oh my gosh, yeah, it was just like when people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, South Jersey is its own place. You've probably driven through it on your way to Florida and didn't even realize that you were driving through it. But like, I love Cape May. I love Cape May. Oh, it's my favorite beach. But yeah, I love that area. Like that. It's just, I would be more than happy to like quarantine there for the next 5 months if I could. But
in South Jersey?
In Cape May specifically.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
Yeah, not just regular. Well, I stayed with my dad for a minute because I drove from Arizona to Boston to work at America's Test Kitchen. And then after that was over, I went from Boston and I was like making my way back to Philadelphia. And I ended up in South Jersey for a few weeks just to hang out with him. And so, yeah, then I remembered like, this is why I don't live here, because he lives in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're talking like llamas and wild turkeys, and yeah. It's like, no, sir, no, thank you. That's not for me. I need a little bit more city than this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, so me moving to South Jersey, it
was
like a culture shock thing.
It really is, and you just kind of go. It's like there's parts of it that's like city adjacent, but nothing's ever fully like urbanized. Right. So you're just like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's like a sitcom in some ways. But Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes. Before you hang up, let the people know where we can find you, where we can support you, where we connect with you.
Yeah, I guess the best way is sort of on social. Oh gosh, we have so many Instagrams. So our main is I am caribBEING. There's Little Caribbean NYC. My personal account is just Shelley Worrell. I keep it very simple. And yeah, so we're on the internet, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, our website. We respond to emails, as you know.
I know, I'm like,
We respond to emails. Someone, if it's not me, someone on the team. DMs not always, but sometimes. But yeah, it's been
perfect. Thank you so much.
You.
See, we beat the internet. Not a problem.
We did. We will not prosper against us.
That is all for this week's episode. Thank you to our guests for spending some time with us, and thank you for listening in and for being a part of the Flyest Click in podcasting. If you love these conversations, be sure to download, subscribe, comment, and share. You can get further connected with the Afros and Knives community by following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to visit our website, afrosandknives.com, and sign up for our newsletter. Afros and Knives does this work only with the financial support of our Patreon community. To become a patron, please visit patreon.com/afrosandknives and pledge your monthly support. We are working on expanding into video as well as offering patron-only content this year, and you don't want to miss out. Until next week, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be at peace.